Shiv Kumarji grew up in Kerala among Thamis, Telugu, and Malayalam speaking communities. As he grew up, he was fascinated with science and technology and how they can make our lives better. And this knowledge of science and technology, he's going to blend with spirituality today and make our lives better also. So he started his career with a degree in mechanical engineering and as a computer aided design engineer, and worked in the industrial world for 5 years, engaging in design, quality assurance, and technical negotiations with clients. Very soon he saw that without the deeper spiritual values, science and technology loses its very direction and purpose. So he decided to take a break from work and started engaging himself in full-time study and practice of Indian spirituality, especially the integral yoga of Sri Aurobindo and the Mother. Since 2001, he has been working in the fields of education and youth through Sri Aurobindo Society at Puducherry. He strives to find ways and means of applying spirituality into every aspect of life. For isn't that spirituality? If it is spirituality up sitting in the mountain tops and not being able to apply it in life, that is no spirituality, of no use.
Very, very warm good morning to all of you from Puducherry, the place where Sri Aurobindo and the Mother started their experiment, and they called this place as a human laboratory, implying that there are some scientific experiments going on, but it is a science of a different nature, a different order. When we normally say science, what do we mean? Physics, chemistry, biology, mathematics. These are the sciences that we know of, isn't it? Now, all these sciences have one thing common, because their focus is on the world that we can see, we can feel, we can touch, we can smell, we can taste. It's about this world, and anything beyond it, well, the science has not yet gained an entry out of this world into things which are beyond this world. Only whatever effects it creates here, the science can observe in the name of physics, in the name of chemistry, in the name of biology, in the name of mathematics, unless we talk about pure mathematics, which we will enter into a little later. But as usual, before we enter into any subject, we need to gather ourselves. So we will start with a 15-minute concentration, where I will request everybody to close your eyes. And as we started yesterday in Anjali's session, when you close your eyes, look within yourself and just see, are you only a body sitting, or are you something more? Because the first thing that you are aware of is the thing called body, 30 kilograms or 40 kilograms, depending on whether you are a child or a teacher, 50, 60 kilograms sitting on a chair. It's heavy. But inside the body, if you focus somewhere inside your head, you'll find that there is a mind also somewhere sitting inside, and it is constantly thinking about so many things, because it is inside the head that you become aware of the thoughts and you become aware of the mind. So there is one part of you sitting inside the body, and if you continue keeping your eyes closed without opening, shift your focus to the heart space. That is where you usually feel all the feelings and emotions. Right now, probably we are a little excited because today's topic is going to be science and what we study and spirituality. Are they going to be same, different? Is one called magic, the other one called non-magic? All that excitement and expectation, it is there somewhere in the art space. So there is another part sitting right inside the body, and we already have three. Our body sitting, mind sitting somewhere inside the head, all our emotions, the vital sitting in the heart. But then we are not only these three. Somewhere deep inside the heart, whenever we have some important moments in life, we have some kind of a communication, some kind of a connection with something which is deep inside the heart, something which is like an old friend. The moment you get connected with that which is in the inner heart, the feeling that you get is this is an old friend, a friend who knows all of us inside out, because this friend has been with us, observing us right from the moment when we were born. It knows the capacity of our body, what it can do, what it can develop, and what it cannot. But it has also been witnessing our emotions from our childhood, so that it knows inside out what type of persons we are. We are naturally a happy person, a sad person, sulking person, or a vibrant, exuberant person. It already knows. And this, which is deep inside our heart, it has been watching closely how we are developing our mind through studies and reading books and through science and technology. And it also knows how our mind functions. It also knows how can we develop and perfect it and master even our mind too. And to this inner friend, now is the time to say good morning. Now, this is the second good morning that we tell to that inner friend, the friend who is deep within our inner heart. And once you have said hello and good morning to this inner friend, you can gently open your eyes. And today's topic is very close to my heart, because I come also from an engineering and scientific background. And interestingly, I also happen to be in here in a spiritual atmosphere. And it is a beautiful two topics which, if we know how to look at it, we will find something fascinating, perhaps one as a stepping stone to the other. So when we say science, we generally mean physics and chemistry and biology and mathematics and allied sciences. What are the limitations of science? What are the advantages of science? What are the plus points of the science? If you look at the plus points, all the scientists who have done plenty of experiments all over the world, they have been so observant, meticulous, methodical, and rigorous about observing the material phenomena, and not just this material phenomena, even subtler material phenomena. So they were able to look inside the molecule and then find that there are atoms. So once they started looking at this world, one discovery which the scientists made is everything is made up of molecules. But then they wanted to know what is a molecule made up of. So they had to invent some device, and they wanted to look inside a molecule. So they went inside a molecule with the device, because with their eyes, they couldn't look inside a molecule. Eyes cannot detect molecules. And in the same way, when we smell what fragrance we have, only to a certain extent we can smell. We cannot smell what is inside the molecules of the fragrance. Our limitation is there. It stops with that. So when they entered into the molecules, now it's a common knowledge because of science that all of us know what is a molecule made up of? Atoms.
Atoms.
And okay, if molecules are made up of atoms, sometimes 1, 2, 3, 5, we don't know. But then the question comes, what are atoms made up of? So they invented microscope. They wanted to go inside still. And when they went inside, when they were able to glimpse what is there inside the atoms, they discovered atoms are made up of. What a fascinating discovery. See, it is not box. No, sometimes the treasure box that we have in house, we can open and see what are the treasures. What that we can see with our naked eyes. But if we can open up an atom and then look inside, one of the first thing that they discovered is what they found. I'm already saying protons and electrons and neutrons. It is not just protons, electrons, and neutrons. They are in motion in a way similar to our planetary system. My God, now that was a superb discovery, because inside the atom, you are finding a resonance of entire planetary system. What do we have in planetary system? What is there at the center of our planetary system? There is a sun. And around the sun, all the planets are going around. I don't know how many planets are there around the sun. Anybody knows how many planets are there around the sun? Well, somebody says 8. Somebody might say even perhaps 10, 11, but they are all going around. And the same thing which happens in the planetary system in the outside universe, a same thing is there in the atom too. And this was a relatively recent discovery for science because they were never able to look inside the atom. And this is the time when one look at some of our very old spiritual texts. They say that Brahmanda, this outside bigger space, is similar to Pindanda, the universe inside an atom. Now, that when I came to know about this, I was surprised. Now, our modern science has telescopes to look and then observe the planetary system. And what do they use to see inside an atom? If you want to see outside far off, you need telescope. If you want to look inside, you need microscope. So with the help of telescopes and microscopes, they figured out, electron microscope too. They figured out the planetary system. They figured out the composition of an atom. But what about the so-called spiritual people who came out with just a sentence like Brahmanda, the outside space, is same as the Pindanda, the space inside an atom? How did they do it? Without the help of a telescope, they were able to understand the planetary system. Without the help of a microscope, they could figure out the composition of an atom. Now, that was my first question when I started going deeper into science. How can these people do it without a telescope or without a microscope? But let us see what the science has discovered more. Once it has discovered the atoms, once it has discovered the composition of the atom in terms of, I already read out to you, electron, proton, and neutron, then they said the entire universe is made up of atoms. In a certain sense, it was a milestone discovery. Once this has happened, then the discoveries started coming up one after the other in the science. But then one question came, because this discovery of the matter of atom and planetary in the way in which the Western scientists were doing was not happening much in India. I think over the last 1,000 years, most of the people in Bharat were going through a kind of a lazy phase. And we will get to know why it was so. But in the West, people were actively digging into the atom and then looking into the universe. But one question came, suppose all the things they discover in America, will they be applicable to Russia? Suppose if 2 atoms of hydrogen mixes with 1 atom of oxygen in America, let us say in a New York laboratory, it gives water. But what guarantee is there if you do the same thing in Russia? So, well, will it give lime juice? Now, that is an interesting thing. So, they were fascinated because nobody can say with authority that what I do here will happen in the same way throughout the universe, because then you should conduct the same experiment throughout the universe. Then only you can conclude if you are a real scientist, that I have proved that wherever you mix hydrogen and oxygen, it results in proportion of 2:1, it results in water. So they wanted to simplify the matter a little bit because they tested in a few places and found that 2 atoms of hydrogen and 1 of oxygen gives water. So they concluded that this discovery, it's an assumption. So they said that in order for the science to progress, we have to assume certain things as in a very fundamental way. Really speaking, science does not proceed on assumption, but it is impossible for science to proceed on experimentation, because everything that they discover, who can verify that it behaves in the same way everywhere? Just imagine, if I say one word to you, you will have certain effect. Suppose if I say the same word to another person, will it have the same exact effect? No. Why? Because people respond differently, but the word was the same, the person who said was the same, the attitude with which he did it was the same. Why should it produce two different effects in two different people? Well, the scientists started scratching their head. Then they said, no, 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 we won't enter into, because that is another field. We will call it as psychology. Because what they discover in physiology, the physical space, is not happening the same way in psychological space. So, because it was a little intimidating for them, everything that they discovered, something else is happening in the psychological space. So they said, let's not go there, because it's a very scary space to go into. Let's confine ourselves only to the physical and material things. And that is the first limitation of the science. It is a material science. And once they have made it into this material science, then they wanted to tell everybody that if some people did some experiment in one place, as long as the same conditions are created, we assume that same results will happen anywhere in the universe. But I tell you, nobody has gone to every corner of the universe. No scientists have done. How do they know that it will be the same everywhere in the universe? Well, we fundamentally assume. So what are the two things we found for material science? They restricted their inquiry to materialistic space. We won't enter into psychological space. And the second one, we have to assume that if somebody does an experiment, the results will be the same if a similar experiment is conducted everywhere, even though there is no guarantee. So this is called objectivity. So what is the advantage of objectivity? Somebody does a scientific experiment and gets a result in America and publishes a result. Somebody in Russia doesn't have to do the same experiment and verify it. If one in America has already verified it, he can assume that this is the same result. This is called objectivity, meaning it doesn't happen in different places in different ways. And what about if a different scientist does the same experiment? Just imagine, I say a word to you, you have, if I say different people, different expression. If a different person says the same word, he will have his own meaning, and therefore the response will also be different. So the question is, if a different scientist does the same experiment, will the result be the same? They assumed yes, because science is, they called it objective. What is objective? It doesn't matter who who does it, but if they do in the same way, result is the same. If you are a Buddhu, or if you are a very highly intellectual person, take 2 atoms of hydrogen, combine 1 atom of oxygen, what you get is water. Whether you are a poet or a literature or a teacher or a student or a Buddhu or intellect, well, objectively it is the same. You understand what is happening to the science? Until, now it's a fascinating journey, until some people who discovered molecules went inside the molecules to atoms. Inside the atom, when they started the what is called an electron microscope, somebody has put it up, when they started observing what is called subatomic particles, meaning the particles which are smaller than atoms, even protons, electrons, and neutrons, when they went into that level, suddenly they entered into a different world, not our material world anymore. And this was scary for the scientists who did it, because when they entered into a subatomic world, all the theories, all the discoveries which they have, it was not applicable there anymore. Therefore, First, they named this world as a quantum world. It's not a different world, in the same world, but if we go inside the atom at the subatomic level, what happens there is fascinating. Now, I'm going to share with you. In the normal world, there is an objectivity of science. But when you go at the subatomic level, they say the person who conducts the experiment actually affects the things on which experiment is performed. That's interesting. Because then the objectivity doesn't apply. It depends on who conducts the experiment. If I do an experiment and I observe, I influence the result in a certain way, another different person influences the thing differently, and therefore the result also will be different. Now, this started shaking up all the scientists, because if you really go at the root of the things, objectivity vanishes. It depends on who goes to that level and with what preparation. Because if somebody goes to that level without training his mind, an untrained mind will influence the experiment in an untrained way, and you don't know what you're going to find. If a person, a scientist, enters into the quantum world without having trained his emotions, where everything is jumping about, then you will be influencing the result in an uncertain way. Now, what they've been wanting to avoid, the psychology, became very prominent. They thought they could keep the psychology aside, but even in the matter, when they went beyond the level, they said, Baba, a person affects and influences what he perceives. So objectivity ceased to apply. I will share with you only the two characteristics of this quantum world, which actually scared some of the scientists. One was there is nothing objective. At the root of matter, there is nothing objective. Second thing, in our normal world, no matter can be in two places at the same time. Yes? So suppose you have 1,000 rupees in your bank. You can't have the same 1,000 rupees in your pocket too. Because money will be sitting in two places, the same money. You can have a different, another 1,000 rupees, but it cannot. You have an apple in your refrigerator. The same apple cannot be there anywhere else, because matter can exist only in one place at any given point of time. But when you go into this quantum world, they found that the things that are there can exist in two places at the same time. Now, so what is the implication? So you do the experiment on one particle, one matter, but you have not sure that you have done the experiment on the matter, because the same matter is existing in another place simultaneously. And then they said they were completely boggled by that. And not only that, they said the same matter exists in different dimensions too. Now I'm scratching my head all over. How can one thing exist in different dimensions? It is impossible. Take any material object. How can it exist in different dimensions all at the same time? It is impossible as long as you do not include psychology. The science was trying to keep out psychology. Psychology was coming in, because what is a simple fact somehow scientists neglect? Look at yourself. Do you exist in your mind? Yes or no? All that you do with your mind is yours. You are there in your mind, right? It's your mind is different from, for example, Ishanya's mind. There is Pramaniti's mind. Everybody, each one of us, we exist in our mind. Do you exist in your vital, or somebody else is there in the vital? Advaya cannot say, in my mind, it is Advaya, but in my emotions, somebody else is there. It's the same Advaya who exists in his vital too. And not only that, in our body, who exists in the body? Well, it is the same Advaya. It's not a third person who is sitting. And even there, even in an unknown dimension, what we call as the soul, who exists inside Advaya? It's Advaya existing in the soul dimension. See, what is so obvious, what is everyday occurrence for us, as long as you try to keep out of science, it's going to come back. And I know some of you must have read up quantum operations. Already the students belonging to higher class, you're already typing out the double slit experiment with the electron. So they say either you can detect electron as a particle or wave, but not both. And depending on, if you want to see the electron as a wave, well, it behaves as a particle. So if you want to see electron as a particle, well, it starts behaving as a wave. Now that is what happens in the quantum world, that your intention influence. Now that is the beauty. So science, fortunately, is at its threshold. Even if you confine everything to matter, even inside the matter, if you go deep enough, you have to enter into a psychological dimension, without which even material science will not be complete without the psychological dimension. And what the people of Bharatiya, remember yesterday I said they chose to be scientists of the psychological realms because they found that what is there happening in the psychological realms, that is what is determining what happens outwardly in the physical world. We will arrive at that a little later. But their focus was more on the psychological world. It is easy when you look at yourself. If I have to ask you, whatever you do in this world, what does it depend on? Why do you do what you have done? But for example, today morning, you must have done at least 10, 15 things before you switched on the computer and then starting. So how did you end up doing what you did? Because first you wanted to. There was an intention in your psychological personality. Once there was an intention, mind started translating it into what you have to do. Okay, I will have to set up my computer. I will have to set up my earphone. I will have to do audio checking, tack. So what you felt as intention and what you thought became action. Simple. In a certain sense, what happened in the psychological me, if I have to talk in terms of Advaya, what happened in the psychological dimension of Advaya resulted in the physical world of Advaya, him doing what he wanted to do. So this is an excellent observation. That is why people of India wanted to explore. If we can somehow, if we want to do things differently, what do we have to change? We don't have to change the world. We just have to change the way we think and feel. Naturally and automatically, whatever we do will be different. But let's come back to that scientific exploration. So the two claims of the science where we found that when you go deep enough, we are not able to confine it to purely materialistic way. They have to enter into a deeper science. And what we call psychology is nothing but a deeper material science. So once we know that, then we understand the beauty of psychological, or if you want to call it even the deepest science, the spiritual, because even right now, the science can only look into, glimpse into the psychology of things. It has not yet gone beyond it. Now, that is the beauty of the science. So now that we understand the limitation, let's play around with how much of this science that we know, you and I and everybody know, matches with the so-called psychological science. So I'm going to play one game with you. We'll take an example, and I'm sure we have several teachers too, physics, chemistry, biology, mathematics teachers are also here, right? Do we have? Because yes, I'm seeing already Deepadi. So I will be taking the help of physics, chemistry, biology teachers too. Now, all of us are going to be scientists for the next 15-20 minutes. And we are going to observe scientifically in our imagination, because what to do in Corona lockdown, I can only call up our imagination to do something to you. Otherwise, we could have done it physically in an experimental way. So imagine a beautiful flower. Which flower can we take? Give me the name of some flower. Some flower that you like. Rose and tulip. Okay, let's take rose and two roses, three roses, and then tulip, and then another rose. Majority is rose, so let's take up a rose. Just imagine a rose bud blooming into a rose flower. All right. Now we are going to look at this rose flower blooming as a person of physics. All right. So now what does it mean? Well, when you look at a flower, rose flower blooming, you're not going to compose music. You're not going to write a poetry on it. You are going to look at it with the eyes of a physics scientist. As a physics person, what are you likely to observe? I want one of the physics teachers, who was the one who said, Deepadi, you are a physics teacher? I am unmuting you. Deepadi, you can speak now.
Sir, I'm chemistry teacher, but I can speak from physics angle also.
Good, excellent.
Sir, if I would have been a physics teacher and if I would have seen a bud blooming, I would have thought about the change in dimensions,
yes,
the change in area, volume, and the increase in weight. That would have been my point of looking at it if I would have been a physics teacher.
So you will be observing the physical dimensions and physical properties.
Yes. If I would, if
as
I will,
a physics
yes,
person.
as a physics person.
Now, who else will say the mechanical motion of the blooming flower, right? I can open the question to some of the students. If you were looking at it with the eyes of a physics teacher or physics-based scientist, what will you be observing? Mechanical motion, anything else? The physical properties, the size, shape. Anybody else has anything to contribute? Who can tell me, when you say physics, what does it mean? It's one particular part of science. So using physics, what do you come to know about the universe? Would anybody like to say, in the name of physics, what are you trying to do? Okay, Advaya says, if we are looking at the world with the eyes of a physics person, what does it mean?
So actually physics means that the gravitational force of the earth and the natural occurrences happening, such as a moving object or such as motion and moving object and rest, motion,
okay,
and gravity,
okay,
size, ratio, measurement,
okay,
volume.
So all of these fall into what category? Because natural occurrence means, for me, a thought is also natural occurrence. Does it not happen naturally? Or are you artificially creating thoughts? It's a natural occurrence, right?
Yes, sir. But
okay,
sir, natural occurrences such as like we can say about tornadoes and like that, they are actually physics, but still something is different from physics. So those we can say partially physics.
Oh, okay, so my thought naturally occurring is not exactly a physics, but it is psychology. It's something else. So what exactly do we mean by physics? Where is my physics teacher? So when we say physics, what are we trying to do? It's we are looking at the universe through a particular lens. What are we trying to do? Deepadi.
We are just trying to focus on that. What are the forces of the universe that are existing, and how are we reacting and related to the forces in the nature?
So we have to refine our vocabulary. For me, my mental force is also something which naturally occurs, because of which all thoughts happen. All my emotional energies are also forces for me. Are you meaning a particular type of force? Because I know that physics doesn't study my mind or my emotions.
No, sir, only the means it can be the other forces, not emotional and mental, but somehow it will be related because it will have an effect.
Hold on. When you say other forces, what type of forces?
Sir, gravity, relativity, and all those forces.
Little more simplified, little more in common man's. Can we call it that they are not psychological forces, but they are, complete my sentence?
They are materialistic Or you say
Materialistic. Now you see, now when you take up a physics book, they will always be using, we are studying forces, we are studying energies, but they fail to put the word materialistic energies only, materialistic force also, because for me, my mind is a force, my speech is a force, my energies are all forces. Everybody can feel it. It's not a rocket science at all, but this is. So physics, we are studying even in material things. A physics doesn't study a flower or a plant and its operations of life. Yes or no, physics teacher?
so it doesn't study directly. Matlab, it's not.
So even among this, it studies only what I would call it as inanimate matter, because animate matter falls under biology. Exactly. So even in there, inanimate matter, what that is what. So when you look at a flower, you are observing the inanimate aspect, like its length and breadth and its color and composition and other things, isn't it?
Yes, sir.
Now, Sarthak, did you want to add anything? If you have covered something, then we will go ahead. If you have anything specific to add.
So can you hear me?
Yes. So what according to you is physics?
So according to me, physics is anything that brings change in the mass, volume, or anything like, as ma'am said, that materialistic. So if we go to the outer world, we can see that all the planets are grabbed by some force in their orbits. So that is physics, because the force is acting on them to keep them in their orbits. If physical forces would not be there, then the planets would keep roaming in the galaxy.
All right. Again, I notice physical forces, because when I am interacting you, I am influencing my thought force, my force of clarity on you. You are affected by it, but it is not physics. Physics is physical forces. Excellent observation. Now,
thank you, sir.
Is it clear? As a physicist, you are only observing the inanimate properties. But suppose if we have to observe the animate property, how does a flower bloom? What force makes it bloom? We end up in what branch of science? Physics, chemistry, biology, mathematics. Which one?
Biology, sir.
Biology. Interesting, isn't it? When we look at biology, then we are talking about what force makes a flower bloom. And so if you look at a rose with the eyes of a biologist, what will you be observing? Who can tell me? I'm not going to straight away ask the biology teachers, because biology teachers will. So in the name of biology, when you look at a blooming flower, what will you be observing? Who can tell me? Okay, Sarthak's quota for next 10 minutes is over. So now, now the quota goes to somebody else. So Shashwat, you have something to say? No, so Shashwat doesn't. Anybody would like to lift your, okay, Sarthak 2. So Sarthak 2's quota is not yet over. So I'm going to ask green shirted Sarthak to say something.
Sir, I think, sir, when a biologist sees a blooming flower, so the first thing he will see is actually how a small seed or the ovary of a flower, how it is evolving and transforming to form a seed of the fruit, and how that seed or that ovary will form into a fruit which will contain the seeds, and then the seeds are dispersed by the various forces of bees and insects, and then the seed also with the help of the natural forces finds favorable conditions, and then how it again blooms and starts a new life.
Excellent. So earlier, when I was talking about scientists exploring, they are discovering that everything is made up of molecules and atoms. What will a biologist see? And something like a plant or a flower, he will look at it as made up of what? Complete my sentence.
Sir, the evolution of life, or the...
Okay, I will give you a clue. It starts with C.
cycle of life.
Okay, good. Try once more.
So can you repeat your question, sir?
When we look at the earlier times, when I said that when the scientists were looking at what is everything made up of, they found everything is made up of molecules. Molecules are made up of atoms. But when a biologist looks at a life form, cells, exactly. Where do you study cells and the nucleus and this one? Where do you study? You study it in mathematics? No,
Biology.
study it in biology. And how the cells join together, how they give birth. The moment you touch biology, you're already talking about giving birth to something, growing, degenerating, dying. These are all processes of life. And you, as a biologist, is going to observe how a life is born in terms of the cells and flourishes it, degenerates and dies. And all the processes involved in it, that is what a biology. But what makes a cell grow, give birth to another cell, what animates the cells is not yet the scope of a biologist.
Understood.
Because it's a life energy, it is not a material energy, it's not a physical force which makes the cells do all the things which a biologist observes. Isn't it? What is a physical force? Heat is a physical force, cold, and somebody pushing it. These are all the physical forces, but a biologist looks at what grows, what degenerates, and what causes it is what is called life energy. Science, biologists have not yet broken through the physical barrier and entered into the world of life energy. Not yet. All right, just wanted to bring that distinction. So we have looked at a flower as a physics person, as a biology person. What other branch of science is left? Chemistry. So when you look at a flower blooming as a chemist, Karthikeya Pandey will say something.
Sir, I'm clear.
Yes, yes.
Sir, it is in chemistry. We would think that it is a chemical change because the flower cannot change back to its old condition, and it reproduces. And sir, there is a change in its chemical composition.
Okay. We are observing the composition and the interaction.
Sir, chemical properties.
And how does it interact within itself, among themselves? So when we look at a cell, based on what you have said, what reactions happen on the inside, meaning interactions, and cell to cell, what interaction happens. So when we look at it as a chemistry, it's a study of behavior of interactions. And that is where the chemistry excels. That also is what is observable as a materialistic things which is inside a cell. So what do we have next? Mathematician. Do you think a mathematician will go and observe a flower blooming? I'm really doubting. Physics person, chemistry person, yes, biology person also you can find wandering in the gardens. Any mathematicians you'll be looking at flowers? If at all, what will he be seeing in a flower blooming? Who can say? Does anybody who is really into mathematics?
Sarthak Mishra just said that he will look at the proportions.
Oh, lovely. Look at that. There's something
It's a
called...
beautiful answer.
There's something called golden ratio when you talk about proportion. Now, for a mathematician, when he looks at it, it's a proportion. It's the patterns. It's the count, the number of petals. It's the measurement. It's the variation, the difference in length, the difference in breadth, the difference in depth. So many things. I am still wondering why mathematicians don't go often to garden and observe flowers, because so many things. Patterns, they are looking for repetitions. They are looking for mathematical laws which are replicable in all the flowers blooming. And then they will come up with a theorem, ratio and proportion, symmetry, absolutely. See, so many things, and all immediately we see all these things, that patterns, and who else is there? Area of the flower taken in the garden by the flower. I'm sure it's one of the most interesting things that we have done. How many flowers will fill a jar or a basket which I am carrying? Who will say? Only mathematicians will say. He has to do estimation. You see, there are so many things which we can do. But when we look at all these things, these are all the so-called scientists. Well, we have done it. Now I want to look at it a little differently, because these are all looking at things in a materialistic way. Let's go one step further. Okay? And what are we going to do? Let us say, if you are an artist and looking at the blooming flower with the eye of an artist, what will you be feeling and trying to express? What will you be observing? Now, who is interested in art? Drawing, painting, sketching. What happened? None of the
Beauty.
Yeah.
Beauty.
Yes, definitely. But I've just asked who are the people who are interested into arts and painting and sketching and drawing. Hardly one hand went up in a thumbs. They're all very typical scientists, huh? Hardly any painter or an artist is here. Beauty, observing the colors, the play of the colors, and also which one goes with it, and the effect that it creates. Well, that is what an artist would do. And also, an artist will capture not only the physical properties, he will capture what is called the essence. You know, I remember in Shantiniketan, when how teachers used to teach, because I have right now with me one person who was in Shantiniketan. I asked him, how do they teach you how to draw a tree? First thing the teacher will say is go and then be with the tree, observe the tree for days together. Once you have observed, the colors and the patterns and the texture and the height, what more is there to observe? The teacher will send you go. And then he will ask you to draw. Well, you will draw something which is very much similar to what you see with your eyes. And the teacher will say, no, this is not it. Why? Well, you have not captured the essence of the tree. He will say, go. And until you find a certain identification with the essence of the tree. And when we draw, it's not a question of reproducing everything mechanically, because that even our cell phones will do. One click, well, it reproduces. If it has a dual focus or a triple camera, well, you will pretty much get what is out there. But an artist goes beyond what is physically perceivable. He captures the life. You can feel flower throbbing in an artist when he captures and puts it on his canvas. And that is the beauty of an artist. So when you go, you're already with the eyes of an artist, you are capturing something beyond the physicality. We'll note down that. Now, if you are a poet, how will you be observing a flower, a blooming flower, a rose? Anybody remembers that famous line about rose from Shakespeare? I don't know. I'm guessing probably Promenade remembers. A rose by any name would still be a rose. Something like that. Well, a poet. Is there anybody who write poetry here? Now let me see if they... Pragya. I'm going to capture you. Pragya. Have you ever written a poem about flower?
Not about a flower. About a river I've written. About a moon I've written, but not flower.
Okay. So now you have one more thing. Next time when you want to look at a flower and then see what comes. So what does a poet do when he looks at a flower? What does he observe? Poets. Any of the teachers here who are poets? I know one day, was it Aradhanadi? No, there was one poet. Which teacher was that? I went through her poems which were there on a blog. And, Anjali Di is also a poet. Nice to know. Fine. Geeta, ma'am. Yeah, I think that's the one. So when you look at a flower as a poet, do you write poems only about its size and shape and color? Kanikadi, who is the person in our group who writes poetry? Was that you? I'm going to unmute you and then you can share. Wait for a second. Yes.
Geeta ma'am writes.
Yes.
And flowers even I like because I enjoy my flowers. So
but do you enjoy it with the eyes of a poet?
Yes, because I don't see with just the physical eye.
Okay.
There are
So
a lot of forces involved.
As a poet, what will you be capturing of the flower beyond its physicality?
Of course, the beauty.
Okay, the beauty.
Joy that it gives. The joy of the flower.
That is interesting.
Because it's so selfless. That's what I feel about a flower.
This is an extremely beautiful thing because poets capture the emotions of things, not only the physicality of things. And then they give a word and the form to that emotions and the aesthetics of it.
So
and
probably ma'am wants to add to that.
All right. So I will have to unmute Pramaniti. Yes, Pramaniti, go ahead.
You know, when I look at sunflowers in particular these days, they give a lot of happiness and I feel they bring in a lot of warmth, happiness, hope and warmth. I see that light.
Excellent.
And in lockdown, especially when you are inside, the moment you go outside, you feel there is beautiful life ahead and this is a temporary phase.
Excellent. The capturing of emotions. Okay, so teachers' quota is over and the students' quota now starts. Who among the students are poets? Do you capture the emotions also, the happiness of a flower? That's beautiful thing. Something you feel radiating from the flower, you feel totally blissed out. Okay, one last teacher's quota. I'm handing it to Anjali Di. I'm unmuting her. So it will take a couple of seconds for the unmuting. Yes, Anjali Di, go ahead.
When I look at flowers, I feel they're always in a state of prayer. They're always looking up and always in a state of prayer.
So beautiful. And in fact, they do something to us also. They touch us very deeply, and that is not physical, not material. So everybody, Kumar Samyak, do you want to say something? Are you a poet, an artist? Okay, Kumar. Kumar, go ahead.
Sir, I'm not a poet, but a story writer. Sir, I've written a story about flowers. Sir,
lovely.
Sir, the flowers, when I write, sir, first was the feelings what we got from the flowers.
Okay. See how it, with your physical eyes, you cannot capture the feelings, isn't it? So there is something more which a writer, a poet and an artist, which is our everyday experience. I'm sure every one of you have these things, these magical things happening when you are in front of, let us say, a rose or a beautiful flower, isn't it? You capture the emotions, you capture their prayerful attitude, you capture that all the deeper aspects, and that is the beauty of a poet too. Suppose anybody here who is interested in music and dance, just put up your hand. Advaya is dancing, Shashwat Vikram is dancing, teacher's quota is over, so I'm rejecting Kanikadi's thumbs up. And Riddhima, I'm unmuting you. So you will have to say, as a dancer, are you a dancer or a musician?
Musician.
Okay, as a musician, when we look at a flower, so how is the interaction going to be?
Sir, it is a feeling inside our heart. We for being a singer, we should be intact with it, from our heart, not from our mind or anywhere else.
Interesting. Do you find music in everything around you, even in flowers?
Yeah.
Because what is music finally? It's a deeper rhythm expressed in terms of sound, and which one around us doesn't have that deeper rhythm? Only the poet, artist, musician capture the deeper rhythm An artist expresses it as a painting, musician expresses it as a song, and dancer expresses it through dance movements. It's all expression, capturing an expression of a deeper rhythm. Beautiful. This deeper rhythm is not available to the eyes of a physics person, chemistry person, biology person, and mathematics person, but they observe other details. So we shouldn't say that one and put down on anything. Each one observes things differently. So the musician or a dancer or a poet or an artist, they find the aesthesis, the deeper feelings and emotions of things which the materialistic science has not even entered into. They don't yet even have a glimpse of it. And yet, this constitutes a major part of our life, and this is the one. So, what we study in terms of physics, chemistry, biology, and mathematics, and what we study as an artist, musician, dancer adds more dimension to it. Now is the big question, the bada question that all of us have been eagerly waiting for. When a spiritual person looks at a blooming flower in a spiritual way, as a spiritual scientist, what is he going to discover, he or she? Now, Shweta Kumari is, I'm unmuting Shweta Kumari. Is Shweta Kumari? It will take just, okay, I'm already getting, we have so many spiritual scientists among the students, Anjali ji. Already I'm getting the answers, and I'm also unmuting Shweta Kumari. But what are the answers coming? As a state of, he sees the divine and almighty smiling. He sees the essence, the philosophy of cycle of life. He sees the divine smiling. Oh my God, for the flowers, how it has bloomed to make everyone happy. Silence. I'm glad flowers are not as talkative as people, going on all the time, ting, 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 ting. So silent. And in silence, a spiritual scientist discovers that the flower is very beautiful creation of God. And oh, somebody said, Shweta is the teacher. I'm sorry, your quota is over. So you will have to come back. Now, who else is there? Sarthak says, he sees thy light. It's not a physical light, right? Or Sarthak, do you mean physical light? Because that everybody sees. And Aryavardhan, where is Aryavardhan? Can anybody unmute? Suresh, can you unmute Aryavardhan? He wants to speak. Aryavardhan, can you switch on your camera if you have? Because then it's easier to look at you and unmute. Otherwise, you can type Aryavardhan, life force, intensity. And Rahul Singh is going really above. He says, spiritual scientists will see Brahman. He will see Paramatma. He will see Bhagavan. A spiritual person, then Rashmi says, spiritual person will take a flower as different emotions like red rose for love, pink rose for admiration. So, Aryavardhan, speak.
Like we know that in everything there's God, so you can listen me.
How do you know everything is God?
So because in last spiritual retreat, Anjali ma'am only said this, that everything is God.
Because Anjali madam said everything is God, then everything must be God, isn't it? Well, that is, Anjali madam must be seeing everything as God, but do you see everything as God?
Yes.
As a scientist, you are not supposed to accept somebody else's theorem and statement, because that is not an objective science. So, do you see God in everything?
Yes.
What does it mean, Arya?
I can't listen you.
So when you say you see God in everything, what do you actually see?
So in a blooming flower, we see that the God is smiling and he is just talking to the sun because in the morning only the flower is blooming. So he is talking to the sun, a contact to the sun.
So beautiful. First thing, Arya, the more we spend time with the blooming flower, the more we will discover the beauty of the smile of the God. And what you have said is so beautiful. And I'm still getting, in case you're wondering, Rahul Singh is an alumni of the school. Okay. The divine trying to perfect the living, blooming flower. It's a divine's attempt to express his perfection through the flowers. Beautiful. Then Preeti says, unaware of its charm, the flower sways to the rhythm of the divine, selflessly offering itself equally to all. Preeti, a poet ho, beautifully put. I read it once again. Unaware of its charm, the flower sways to the rhythm of the divine, selflessly offering itself equally to all. So beautiful. So, first thing, a spiritual person, does he see things with the physical eyes like a material scientist does? So that he starts observing its color, and then this is this much distance and height and weight and depth, and then this one. What is it through which a spiritual person sees? Who can give me a name for that? He doesn't see with the physical eye. So a spiritual person, with what does he see? Third eye. I have only two eyes. Where is this third eye? I need more people. He sees with the heart. Lovely. Eyes of the heart. More beautiful. He sees with the heart. Eyes of the soul. Seventh sense. Keeping the vital in mind. Intuitive insight. It is the word that I am looking for. There is another thing in us which sees, and that thing is called intuition. We don't have only the physical eyes that see, but as some of you said, when we look at things from deep within, from the inner heart, what is there? Somebody said the eyes of the soul. When the soul sees everything, it sees at everything through intuition. So how can we become spiritual scientists? Only when we begin to see things from the soul dimension. How does the soul sees? It sees through intuition. And do you know what Mother has said beautifully about intuition? Well, intuition is the faculty of the future. Now, until in the past, we have the eyes of a scientist, eyes of a physics person, chemistry person, biology person. We have had the eyes of an artist or musician. Even they are not sufficient. There is something more beyond, which is so futuristic that if you want to be really the most advanced person on this planet Earth, well, you will have to look at things from the intuition. What happens when you look at things through the eyes of intuition? Well, the first thing is you look at a blooming flower as an expression of God. Later, we are going to see what Ramanujam, Srinivasa Ramanujam has said. So beautiful. Just remember this sentence as an expression of God or expression of the infinite intelligence which created the earth. What do you see in that? Well, if you add a little poetic touch, you are seeing the smile of that infinite intelligence in the flower. Now, this is something that when you feel, one, look at the flower with the eyes of the intuition, you look at it as an expression of the infinite intelligence. And then when you look at it, you can actually enter into a connection. Now, this is important. Listen to me carefully. If spiritual person has not exhausted by looking at things intuitively, because that is only the starting point, step one. What is step two? Through intuition, you reach out to the flower and identify with the flower. What do you mean identify? Have you ever identified with anything in your life? Oh, who give me a thumbs up or thumbs down? What does identification mean? Sarthak? Okay, green Sarthak quota is over. Who will, have you ever identified? When we say identify, what do we mean? I will give an example, which is actually the tomorrow's topic also. When something irritating happens outside you, all right, what happens to you? You are calm and quiet. Suddenly something enters into you. For example, when you are sitting calm and quiet, somebody comes with a lot of agitation, start shouting abusive words at you for no reason at all. What happens to you? You are calm and quiet, and vibrations of restless, that violence enters into you, and then you become angry. I don't know whether the Zen story is going to be tomorrow, but I'm going to bump up the Zen story. One person has problem of easily getting angry with almost everything. We call it as short temper. So he said, Arey Baba, it's not going to happen. Why am I getting angry with everybody so easily? So I want to rectify it. So he goes to a Zen master. So Zen master says, Dada, I have a problem. He says, what? So I have lots of anger in me. So Dada says, oh, can you show the anger so that I can work on it? He says, no, I don't have anger now. But then Zen master says, but you said you have lots of anger. Then the person says, no, I don't have now, but it comes. So Zen master says, if you don't have it now, it comes. From where does it come? I don't know. Well, people and then things that are around me, happenings around me, it comes from there. So he says, okay, if it comes from there, obviously it is not yours. Like if somebody having their own mobile phone happens to put a mobile phone in your hands, who does the mobile phone belong to? Who does the mobile phone belong to? Is it yours? No, it is somebody else's. Then he thinks, so anger comes from somebody else and something else, but then it enters into me and then it becomes me. He says, how can it become? Well, I identify with what comes from outside as me. I identify with anger, and then after that I become angry. I'm not Archana Mishra anymore. I'm not Krinalini anymore. I'm not Advaya. I am angry. This is identification. When we are happy, you feel I am happy, isn't it? That is identification. When you are sad, when most of you are, I heard, little frustrated because you are not able to go to your friends, you are not able to go to meet with your friends, go to your school, little frustration. When you identify it with it, you become. This is identification. Is it understood what you mean by identification? When we identify, we become that. Yes or no? Is it clear? Simple, because we are already doing it, I don't know, 100 times in a day. So what happens to a spiritual person through intuition? When he looks at a flower, he identifies with the flower. Meaning what? He becomes a flower. Can you imagine suddenly if Karthik, who is sitting, Karthik Pandey, suddenly if you become a flower, what will you be feeling? You will be feeling everything that is part of the flower, its softness, its structure, its beauty, its poetry, its art, its rhythmic movements, its dance. Besides so many things, you will feel the smile of the divine. Why feel? You become the smile of the divine when you identify with the flower, isn't it? Just look at, if a spiritual scientist, when he looks at a flower, first looks at it with intuition, then identifies with it. When he identifies, he becomes the flower. And when we become the flower, we know everything that is to be known about the flower. We know its mathematical aspect, we know its physics aspect, we know its chemistry aspect, biology aspect, poetic aspect, dance aspect, music aspect, because we are the flowers when we are completely identified. How beautiful will that be? Just imagine the beautiful sunrise in Puducherry. Every day we get sunrise, the most beautiful sunrise. But if I look at the sunrise only as a mathematics person, I will be calculating. Still, it will be, I will be blown away. As a physics, chemistry, biology, as even a poet or an artist or a dancer, I will still be blown away. But just imagine if I become the sunrise and I feel myself rising at the horizon, shining forth and lighting up the entire world with my infinite colors, infinite shades of colors, reaching out to enlivening everything in my garden, because all the plants and flowers, the moment they capture the sunlight, they interact with the sunlight and they become one family. If I become the sunlight, if I'm a spiritual sunlight, what a beautiful experience this will be. And this is what it means to be a spiritual scientist. So step one, through intuition, we reach out. We see in and through intuition. Step two, we identify, and then we become the flower. And step three, we become aware of all the dimensions of existence of the flower. Remember how the quantum scientists discovered a flower can exist in all dimensions? Flower can exist in physical dimension. It can exist in emotional dimension. That is where we feel the happiness and the vibrations of the flower. It can exist in the mental realm. Somebody can write pages and pages about the flowers, and it exists in a deeper dimensions too. I identify with all the dimensions of the flower until I reach the dimension where it is a direct expression of God. Now this is the beauty. I identify with physical qualities. I identify with psychological qualities. I identify with the essence of the flower, which is its spiritual qualities. And when I do that, something in me opens up, and I go so deep within myself that when I come out of that experience, something in me has changed so dramatically, so magically. And that is the final dimension. Looking at the flower can transform me. Step three, when a spiritual scientist looks at things with the spiritual eye, he gets transformed. Just looking at a flower, looking at a sunrise, what beauty will be there. And this is what it means. So when we look at physical sciences, it's okay to begin with physical sciences, but we enter into the psychology, the emotions, and the mental energies of something, and then we enter into the spiritual dimension of things. And when we do that, the final result is it transforms us. So here is one way of looking at the spiritual scientist. Well, he is being transformational in his nature because it changes him. Every experience in his life changes him. And every occurrence, every incident that he goes through changes him so dramatically and so beautifully. We will take a pause here because what we have seen is how what we call as spiritual scientist, he is actually a culmination of a material scientist as well as the so-called psychologists who do therapy and then deal with emotions, mental disorders, who deal with that psychological dimension. And spiritual scientist is a culmination of physical and psychological occurrences that are happening. Now, this is such a beautiful thing. I am always fascinated with people who have done it in their life and then understanding what has happened to them and also coming. I have two such geniuses who have opened the spiritual scientists in them, and I'm going to share their life story with you because it is mind-blowing. One, his name is Srinivasa Ramanujam. How many people have heard about Srinivasa Ramanujam? Let me see. Thumbs up or thumbs down? Everybody. Yes. Another one is Jagadish Chandra Bose. How many have heard? Give me a digital thumbs up or even a physical thumbs up. Yes. So the conclusion of what we have discussed, spirituality is the deepest of sciences. It goes beyond physical, it goes beyond psychological sciences, and it is a culmination, the finale of all other sciences. Now, when we talk about Srinivasa Ramanujam, I have a special connection with him because I'm a lover of mathematics. That's why I ended up taking up engineering. And when my mathematics teacher used to come, he comes into the classroom. This is a beauty. There's a way in which mathematics has to be taught. You see, if the teacher comes in with the idea that why my students are not getting mathematics, no, I'm going to scratch my head and it's going to be a very torturous experience of having mathematics, especially the higher mathematics, nothing happens in the classroom. My mathematics teacher, when he walks into the classroom, he will be bubbling with happiness. Now you might be wondering, why is the mathematics teacher bubbling with happiness? Because when he comes inside, he says, students, we are going to discover so many hidden things of this world, and it's such a joyous thing to discover. I want to share my joy with you. This is easier. Mathematics teacher doesn't want to share mathematics with us. That's, it becomes a too tough thing on us. He wants to share the joy of mathematics things because he has felt the joy through mathematics. Only somebody who has felt joy through mathematics can actually be a joyous mathematics teacher. So this is my love which got developed in mathematics, because of which I started taking up Ramanujam also. So a fun game we start with, because such a fascinating subject. Remember, my mathematics teacher used to look at maths as a kind of a magic door to the universe. So we will do a simple game now. And everybody, I'm going to ask a mathematical question to you, not complicated, simple. And you will have to answer me or type out the answer. There's no trick question, okay? Seedha sada. What is 1 plus 2? What is 1 plus 1? Let's start with the basics. 2. I'm glad nobody has a difference of opinion, because this is not a matter of opinion. It's a fact, right? 1 plus 1 is 2. Is it a fact or it's an opinion? Because opinions can change. Today, I think it is 2. Tomorrow, I will think that it may be 3. No. Is this a fact or opinion? It's a fact. 1 plus 1. What is this 1? Can anybody show me 1? Okay, I'm seeing Sarthak and Vishanya. You are showing 1 finger. I asked you to show me 1. Why are you showing 1 finger? Can you show me 1? I'm not asking you to show 1 finger. If I ask you to show, everybody show 1 finger. Come on. Now I don't want this. Just show me 1. Kartikeya Pandey, you are still showing 1 finger. I don't want to see your finger. I want to see 1. Array? Again, where is my mathematics teacher? I want to include my mathematics teacher also. Who is the mathematics teacher? This is so fun. Who is our mathematics teacher? Suresh. We don't have any mathematics teacher today. Anjali ji? 1 pen. Who is showing me 1 pen? Show me. Well, I have to tell you, I don't want to see 1 of anything. I want to see 1. I want to see. I don't want an explanation. 1 is an integer that represents bada bada. No. Show me 1. Not 1 pen. Not 1 finger. Kartikeya, you are showing me 1 pen. Not 1. Because if you can't even show me 1, how did you add 1 to 1 and then say that it is 2? Babre. If I ask you, have 1 pen, take another pen, add 1 pen to another pen, what will you get? 2 pens. Take 1 apple, take a second apple, add 1 apple to another apple, what will you get? 2 apple. But if what I have said, take 1, take another 1, what did you take when I said that? Were you imagining an apple or a pen? What were you imagining when I said 1? Such a simple question, and yet somebody says they were imagining apple. Such a simple question, and so when I said 1, what did you imagine? Apple or orange or pen? Why I am asking is 1 plus 1 depends on what you imagine the 1 to be. Everybody said 1 plus 1 is equal to 2 as a fact. I say no, it depends on what that 1 is. First question. Take 1 drop of water and add 1 more drop of water. What will you get? 2 drops of water. So 2 drops will remain here and then say, I'm 1, like 2 apples, add 1 drop, another 1 drop. So the drops will remain separate, like how 2 apples are there. Somebody says 1 big drop. Interesting. So when you add 1 apple with another apple, do you get 1 big apple? No, it's a big problem, because then when apple wala comes, puts all the apples in truck, all will become 1 big apple. No. If you add 1 drop of water to another drop of water, what will you get? You get still 1 drop, but you can say 1 big drop. But numerically, is it 1 or 2? Just show me in your hands. Is it 1 or 2 numerically? It's 1 but big drop. So I'm asking you, who said 1 plus 1 is 2? Not true. Isn't it? Because it depends on what that 1 is. If that 1 is apple, yes, you get 2 apples. But if it is a drop of water, you don't get 2 separate waters, you get. Now, seems like a kind of trick. Is it? It seems to be an exception. No. I say, can you all, do you know what 0 is? Give me a thumbs up. You know what's a 0, right? And okay, take 1 0 and add 1 more 0 to it. 0 plus 0. What will you get? 2 zeros. Will you get 2 zeros? You will get 0, 1 0 only. My God. Yeah, 0 plus 0 is still 1 0. Nobody is saying I will get 2 zeros. Interesting. If 0 plus 0, take 1 0, add 1 0. If we get only 1 0, who said 1 plus 1 is equal to 2 is a fact? That's amazing. You see, somewhere we are being tricked into, or somewhere something is happening. I can go even into another one. All of you have heard of what is an infinity, something which cannot be measured. Give me a thumbs up. Infinity. Okay. Take 1 infinity and add 1 more infinity. What will you get? You get 2 infinities? No, infinity itself doesn't have measure. Something measureless, add another measureless. Well, it's not 2 measureless. It's already measureless itself means that it's 1, but it is without boundary. Now, have you heard of charges? Positive charge, negative charge. Electrons have what charge? Electrons have what charge? Negative. Protons have what charge? Positive. But as a quantity, positive or negative, the quantity is the same. Like, you know, -3, -2, -1, plus 0, +1, +2. That quantity is the same. Only one is in the negative direction, another one is in the positive direction. So I'm going to ask you, take 1 unit of positive charge, add to it 1 unit of negative charge. What will you get? 0. Interesting. You don't get 2 positive charges, you don't get 2 negative charges, you get 0, meaning you get nothing. Interesting. Now, I wanted to bring to your attention that somewhere we have brainwashed ourselves into very one-sided way of thinking. 1 plus 1, 2 applies to what in this world? Only a few things in the world. It doesn't apply to water, it doesn't apply to 0, it doesn't apply to infinity, it doesn't apply to... Now I'm going to tell you something more interesting. Very interesting. You take one person, he can do some amount of work. You take another person. Now, when you put them together, they will be able to do how many persons' work? Let us say somebody who breaks a patthar. Break now. I don't know the word for break, but doing that. Todna. Okay. So, if two breakers of stone get together, so how many people's work will they be able to do according to mathematics? 2 people's work. Go to a psychology person and then tell him that 2 such people have together, and how many people's work will be able to do? Psychologists will say it depends. Yeah, what does it depends? Well, it depends whether they can go with each other or not. Interesting. Whether there is harmony in them or disharmony. If there is harmony, psychologists will say they can do more than 2 people's work. No mathematics. If 2 people in harmony come together, mathematically, they can't do more than 2, but psychologically, they can do more than 2. If they are in disharmony, do you think they will be able to do even 2 persons' work? 0 persons' work, and it goes even on the negative because they will start fighting with each other who will break the stone. So psychologically, one added to another, well, it depends. And now you understand that the way we are, the moment we confine ourselves only to materialistic science, we are leaving out, I don't know, 99% of the world, not sure about it. But if we bring in the other dimensions too, it becomes such comprehensive, all-encompassing way. The materialistic science is a limited way of looking at it. The psychological way is again a limited way of looking at it. The spiritual scientist, when he looks at it, he doesn't ignore the physical scientist. He doesn't ignore the psychological scientist. He rather completes their perception through looking at all the dimensions and all the properties. Now we come back to Ramanujam. So I just wanted to play around. There are so many things which are such simple things we have never given a thought, but when I look at things with a different eye, somebody says 1 + 1 is 2, I immediately say, no, it is so much more. And then the process starts, which is why I just want to share with you. But before we take up Ramanujam, because it's a beautiful touching, we will have to do justice to it. I will conclude our session because probably in the next session, we will take up the Ramanujam and I will show you something beautiful that happens also. Conclusion, I wanted to read out something from the mother when somebody asked her something. It's a beautiful thing which somebody with a scientific temperament asked the mother. So he looks at what is happening in India, in Bharat, the way Bharatiya people used to look at things in a spiritual scientist way, and what in the West generally in the materialistic scientist way, he was finding there's a big difference. So he wanted to ask the mother one question about one particular thing between the people of the East, specifically the Bharatiya or the people of the West. Mother somewhere has said, and this person asked the question. Listen to me carefully. He asks, Mother, you say in one of your conversations that Indians are much more inwardly sensitive than Westerners, and they sense the inner feelings of others more than the Westerners. Can you say something more about it? Now, this is both a problem as well as an advantage. Problem because we miss out so much on the precise observation of material things. The material things become a little hazy. That detailed attention, observation, concentration on things of the physical nature is a little less. That shouldn't be. That's not it, the spiritual way. And if we are only inwardly, like an artist, like in music, if you look only music, only art in everything, you will miss out on the other dimension too. So this is the thing. And then mother replies to it. She says, yes, in general, it is true. When the people of the East, especially from Bharatiya, those who are really Bharatiya, they have a little more of the inner sensitivity, because of which they perceive more of the inner things. And somebody who has a materialistic perception perceives more of the material things. So the mother says, yes, in general, it is true. But not every Indian, only in those who are truly Indian Bharatiya. She says, in those Indians who are consciously or subconsciously open and receptive to the unique mind and soul of India. What a beautiful. We connect back to the soul of India. What do we mean by the soul of India? Well, all of us in the first session yesterday, we saw that we have a body, lots of emotions jumping around, lots of thoughts jumping around. We have these three, but then we saw we have something, a fourth two, to which we gave the name soul. And did we give the name psychic being? No. All right, soul. And yesterday we saw, give it any name that you want. It is the fourth part of you which is sitting inside, and this is the fourth part. So when just as you have a fourth dimension, your soul, which is your true personality, other things are like monkeys, catch things from here and there. They often misrepresent you. But what is there in the soul truly represent you, because that is your center, that is the core, that is the real you, that is the real Kartikeya Pandi, that is the real Spash, and that is the real Krinalag. And it is not the same for everybody. Everybody is unique and truly originally unique. Now, just as we have a soul, mother says, the countries also have a soul. How is that? Just as we have a physical part, the countries also have a physical part. What are the physical parts of India? Who can tell me? The number of states, the people who are in it, their body, the soil, the minerals, all the things that you study in the history, the states, the oceans. Well, ocean is outside. States, people, mountains, rivers, plants, they are all physical part. Landforms, they are all physical part of our country, Bharat. Now, when you go outside, and especially when a Westerner comes here, he can identify certain emotional properties of Indians, because he will immediately say that, oh, especially you go to Bengal, they're supposed to be very emotional people. But in general, in India, we are a little more emotional than the people outside. A certain emotional characteristic. There is certain emotional expression of a country as a whole. What are the emotional expression? There are a lot of things we create and put emotions into all that we produce. What are they? Music, there's an Indian music, Indian dance, Indian art. These are all the vital part of our country. Okay, somebody is still in the physical part. Let us get into the vital part. In the vital part, art, music, dance, drama, poetry, anything that has a emotional content, this is the vital of our country. Then there is an Indian thought, Indian idea, and everything that comes from the Indian mind constitutes all that India has thought the best. When you put together, yes, I forgot to mention about values in the vital. Yes, all the beautiful qualities that we have, part of the Indian vital. Indian mind is the brilliance of Indian mind, which is expressed in the form of mathematics. Zero was invented in India. The decimal system was invented in India. Aryabhatta had already discovered several things. We already knew mathematically that the earth was revolving around itself and going around the sun. We have already calculated the distance between sun and the moon and the earth. So many things that we have already discovered, all put together, constitute the mind of India, the genius mind of India, of which people like J.C. Chandra Bose, Jagadish Chandra Bose, and Ramanujam are shining examples. They epitomize. But this constitutes the mind. But we saw, like yesterday, there is something deeper, because everything on this earth has a dimension which is called spiritual dimension, which the quantum physics is now telling us. This everything exists in multiple dimensions. We exist in the physical dimension, vital dimension, mental dimension, and the spiritual dimensions too. And India, in its spiritual dimension, is called Bharat Mata. Sri Aurobindo gives it another name. Give it another name. She calls it as Bhavani Bharati. And in some way, he calls it as Durga. And then I still remember when in one place he looks at India in the form of Durga, and then he wrote something beautiful as an invocation, which is called Durga Stotram. And it's such a beautiful thing how Sri Aurobindo connected with the soul of India. And I tell you, if any one of us want to connect with the soul dimension of India, just we have to take up that Durga Stotram. I will see if I can pull up the Durga Stotram, because probably we can end our session with the chanting of Durga Stotram in English. It's also available in anybody. Even I remember mother giving introduction to it, that this Durga Stotram is for anybody who loves India and anybody who wants to connect with the soul of India. So the soul of India is that particular dimension. And when we get connected, our sensitiveness, inner sensitivity just explodes forth. The way once we get connected to the soul of India, I tell you, with that, when we open our eyes, everything that we get connected to becomes so vastly and fundamentally different, because we have connected. And that it's a secret which mother gives, that in those Indians who are consciously or subconsciously, some are born like that, they feel for India. It's not that bahut mehnat karke unko ye hua hai. It's not that it happened, but some are born because subconsciously they are born with that connection with that India. They will eat for India, they will live for India, they will die for India, but it can also be consciously done. So in those Indians who are consciously or subconsciously open and receptive to the unique mind and soul of India, this inner sensitivity is there. What a beautiful clue that we get. And then she says, but, there's a but in the present condition, where the highly externalized culture and psyche of the West has invaded the whole world, just physics and chemistry and biology and mathematics have taken over the world. Now, there are other dimensions are neglected, and we have to bring those neglected back. So she says, in the present condition, where the highly externalized culture and psyche of the West has invaded the whole world, the receptivity, this receptivity among Indians is very much clouded. Just imagine in our school or in our home, how many people talk about the soul of India and connecting with it? See, why? Because they have not yet learnt it in their schools and from their parents. And if you go back, well, we were under the rule of a foreign, where most of these things were taken away from education, taken away from our household, taken away from our life. Now that we know we have the secrets, we just have to bring it back. Remember, we are not going to bring it back only in schools. So we are not going to talk to the management. You know, somebody said, How do we change education? Talk to the management. No, the first we'll have to start from home, and then we can make it happen in the school, and then we will have to make it everywhere in our society. So coming back to what Mother has said, right now as Indians, we are only namesake Indians. And because of which we could not yet connect with the soul of India, because of which our inner sensitivity is very less. But if we can acquire this inner sensitivity, then, well, we open up to how many dimensions have we opened up to? In the physical dimensions, we opened up to physics dimension, chemistry dimension, mathematics dimension, and biology dimension. In the psychology dimension, how many dimensions did we open up to? Arts, music, dance, drama, poetry, and in ancient India, there was a university called Takshashila. 64 arts were taught. How many? 64 arts we had. How many are now taught in our school or practiced at home? Very few. We have lost quite a lot, and we will have to bring back. Now, Anusha wants to ask a question. So because it's important, we will ask Anushka to unmute. Suresh, can you, Anushka, you will have to switch on your video so that we can identify and then unmute you. Where is Anushka? Anushka, can you unmute yourself? Or if you can type out, in the chat, you can type out the question in the chat box itself.
Suresh, can you unmute Anusha?
Anusha Tandon.
Anusha Tandon. Suresh, please unmute Anusha Tandon.
So Suresh also must be, for him to look at everybody, 3 screens full of everybody.
Not three, there are 10 screens.
10 screens. There you are.
Anusha, please unmute Anusha.
If you can. Otherwise, I'm asking Anusha and Advaya to type out the questions too. Whichever happens first, we will take up.
Anusha can raise her hand.
Raise your hand, the digital hand, so that it's easier to locate. But please start typing also after the distance, so that whichever one, if Suresh can find you, otherwise. So the same goes to the other one also who wanted to ask a question.
Anusha, you've been unmuted. Anusha, you can speak.
Yes, ma'am. Sir, why in the India, why blue in the tricolor, blue color is used?
Oh my God, such a simple answer. Shall I give you a 1-sentence answer?
Yes, sir.
Just Google it and it will tell you. So it is such an easy to know answer. So we are taking it up in this thing. The other person who has some other question.
Advaya, can you unmute yourself? Suresh, can you unmute Advaya? Advaya, show your hand. Yes, you've been unmuted.
Thank you, ma'am.
Yes.
So, sir, my question was, sir, you said a 4th name for your inner self. Sir, you said that it's a self-assignment. So, what name will you give to that 4th?
Tell me, why do you want to know?
No, sir. I just want to know because, sir, you are a great philosopher. I want to know. I want to get
Look at that.
Inspiration.
You know what Sri Aurobindo says about philosophy? It's a fun question, okay? Sri Aurobindo says philosophy is the art of talking about things which you have never experienced. So you talk about God and then universe and then this, you can rant about, but if somebody asks, have you seen God? You remember the question of Swami Vivekananda? He was a terrific intellect and he was also searching for God. And he found so many people just like that talking about God. You know, God, you know, his name is Brahman and is Paramatma and then he's this and that. So he said after listening to it, just one question. Sir, have you seen God? Then people will say, huh? What do you say? I'm talking philosophy. I can talk whatever I want, but what to do? I have not seen God. Until finally, one person said, yes, I have seen God. I have spoken with God as you and I speak sitting together. In fact, more concretely. And then he says, you too can do it. Who is the person who said this to Swami Vivekanand?
Ramakrishna.
Good. You did not Google
Ramakrishna.
this. You did not Google this and find out, right? You already knew about it.
Yes, sir, I know.
Good.
Sir, I'm a Bengali.
Oh my God. Look at that. Now, this is the real Bharatiyas we are talking about. But what to do, when I started asking questions about this, I've already started reading what Mother has said. And Mother has given 2 names to it. She said you can call it as a soul. But another name also she has given is the psychic being. So because when I read, I've already read about it before, I told the Mother, please make me feel a little bit of this psychic being. I want it. And that, because of that, I already have a name. I call it as the psychic being or the genius within. That also is said by the Mother. There is a genius within every one of us. And she says right now, it is sleeping. Why? Because we are not interacting with it. We just have to open the doors to it and the genius comes alive. The true Advaya is sleeping inside. And when you make an effort to get contact with it, it will wake up and start expressing itself in all the dimensions we spoke about. Don't think that spiritual means something airy-fairy. Spirituality is that which covers all the dimensions, including physics and chemistry and mathematics and biology. So I call it by the name psychic being.
Genius.
Sometimes I call it as my inner friend. And this is it. All right. So connecting with the soul of India, we will conclude this session by reading from the Durga Stotram. So I'm going to share my screen with the Durga Stotram. It is written by Sri Aurobindo when he was in the thick of the freedom struggle, when he wanted all people in India to connect with the soul of India. So in his intensity and power of concentration, he formulated his aspiration to connect it to India, and then he called it as Durga Stotram. So in this Stotram, Mother India is called by the name Mother Durga. So Mother Durga is nothing but India. You can imagine Mother India in any form. So I'm going to first share my screen with you. Now there is a mother's message. For the first time in the ashram, when Durga Stotram, Hymn to Durga, was published, on its first page, Mother gave this message: for those who love India and wish to work for her greatness. So if you love India, if you wish to work for a great India, Mahabharat, then this is it. And what we have is, Sri Aurobindo wrote it in Bengali. So Advai, I will tell you, you look up the Bengali version of it and then read the original Bengali, but even the English version also seen and corrected and approved by Sri Aurobindo. So I request all of you just to become a little quiet and then read in your mind with me. I will be reading it loudly and just follow the reading, and in your mind you can follow. It's a beautiful invocation, and it starts with Mother Durga, rider on the lion, giver of all strength, Mother, beloved of Shiva, we born from thy paths of power, we the youth of India are seated here in thy temple. Listen, O Mother, descend upon earth, make thyself manifest in this land of India. Mother Durga, from age to age, in life after life, we come down into the human body, do thy work, and return to the home of delight. Now too we are born, dedicated to thy work. Listen, O Mother, descend upon earth, come to our help. Mother Durga, rider on the lion, trident in hand, thy body of beauty armor clad, mother, giver of victory, India awaits thee, eager to see the gracious form of thine. Listen, O mother, descend upon earth, make thyself manifest in this land of India. Mother Durga, giver of force and love and knowledge, terrible art thou in thy own self of might, Mother beautiful and fierce. In the battle of life, in India's battle, we are warriors commissioned by thee. Mother, give to our heart and mind a Titan's strength, a Titan's energy, to our soul and intelligence, a God's character and knowledge. Mother Durga, India, world's noblest race, lay whelmed in darkness. Mother, thou risest on the eastern horizon. The dawn comes with the glow of thy divine limbs, scattering the darkness. Spread thy light, Mother, destroy the darkness. Mother Durga, we are thy children. Through thy grace, by thy influence, may we become fit for the great work, for the great ideal. Mother, destroy our smallness, our selfishness, our fear. Mother Durga, thou art Kali, naked, garlanded with human heads, sword in hand, thou slayest the Asura. Goddess, do thou slay with thy pitiless cry the enemies who dwell within us. May none remain alive there, not one. May we become pure and spotless. This is our prayer. O Mother, make thyself manifest. I will skip one and go to the next one. Mother Durga, extend wide the power of yoga. We are thy Aryan children. Develop in us again the lost teaching, character, strength of intelligence, faith and devotion, force of austerity, power of chastity, and true knowledge. Bestow all that upon the world to help mankind appear, O Mother of the world. Dispel all ills. I skip one more again. Mother Durga, enter our bodies in thy yogic strength. We shall become thy instruments, thy sword slaying all evil, thy lamp dispelling all ignorance. Fulfill this yearning of thy young children, O Mother. Be the master and drive thy instrument. Wield thy sword and slay the evil. Hold up the lamp and spread the light of knowledge. Make thyself manifest. Mother Durga, when we possess thee, we shall no longer cast thee away. We shall bind thee to us with a tie of love and devotion. Come, Mother, manifest thyself in our mind and life and body. Come, revealer of the hero path. We shall no longer cast thee away. May our entire life become a ceaseless worship of the Mother. All our acts a continuous service to the Mother, full of love, full of energy. This is our prayer. O Mother, descend upon earth. Make thyself manifest in this land of India. With that, we will conclude. We will remain silent for 10 seconds, embodying this prayer, asking the Mother to come to our help as our friend, as our guide, as our teacher, as our parents. Let's all pray to Mother India for 10 seconds in silence with eyes closed. Thank you so much. And when we meet in the afternoon, we are going to know about two people who got connected with the soul of India, Srinivasa Ramanujam and Jagadish Chandra Bose. So we meet in the afternoon. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Shiv Kumar ji. From everybody's side, we thank you. Infinite gratitude to you. It was a beautiful session. And very, very grateful to you. Promise to be with us till Jaipuria School is Shiv Kumar ji's part of the gym.